I built my dad's company for 15 years. He gave the CEO job to my lazy brother. I bankrupted them in 6 months. He thought blood was thicker than competence. I showed him the cost of bad business. There's an old saying in the construction business: the foundation is everything. If the foundation is weak, the house will fall. My father taught me that. He didn't teach me in a classroom or a boardroom. He taught me that on my first day at Sterling Construction, when I was 16 years old, sweeping sawdust off the floor of a warehouse in the dead of summer. The air was thick with humidity and the smell of curing concrete. "Lucas," he said, pointing to the slab we had just poured for a garage extension. He wiped sweat from his forehead with a dirty rag. "You see this? You can paint the walls gold. You can put in Italian marble floors. You can hang chandeliers worth more than this truck. But if this slab cracks, if the mix was wrong, the whole thing is garbage. Competence is the concrete. Never forget that." I didn't forget. I internalized it. I lived it. For 15 years, I was the concrete of Sterling Construction. My name is Lucas Sterling. I am 35 years old. And 6 months ago, I was the VP of operations for the largest commercial contractor in the tri-state area. I wasn't just an employee. I was the engine that kept the lights on. To understand the magnitude of what happened at the gala, you have to understand where we started. When I joined full-time after getting my civil engineering degree, Sterling Construction wasn't a titan. It was a mom-and-pop operation. My father, Richard, was doing driveway repaving and small residential remodels. We had 3 trucks, and 2 of them leaked oil. I was 22, fresh out of college, hungry to prove myself. "Dad," I told him one night at the kitchen table, spreading out blueprints I had drawn up on my own time, "we're thinking too small. The margin on driveways is nothing. We need to bid on the municipal hospital expansion." He laughed at me. He was drinking a beer, tired from a day of laying pavers. "Lucas, that's a $10 million job. We don't have the bonding capacity. We don't have the crew." "I'll get the bond," I said, "and I'll hire the crew. Trust me." I spent the next 3 weeks sleeping 4 hours a night. I wrote the bid proposal myself. I met with the surety agents. I leveraged my own small savings account to secure the insurance. We got the job. It should have been a disaster. We were understaffed and inexperienced at that scale, but I wouldn't let it fail. I lived on that job site for 8 months. I learned Spanish so I could communicate better with the framing crew. I caught a mistake in the HVAC ducting that would have cost us $50,000 to fix later. I personally drove a dump truck on a Saturday because the driver called in sick. We finished 2 weeks ahead of schedule and $200,000 under budget. That job put us on the map. It was the spark. From there, it was a snowball effect. The mall renovation, the high-rise downtown, the university stadium. I sacrificed everything for that company. And I mean everything. I remember the night my marriage ended. It was a Tuesday. My wife, Elena, had planned a dinner for our 5th anniversary. I was supposed to be home at 6. At 5:45 p.m., a water main burst at the stadium site. It was a catastrophe. I didn't get home until 1 a.m., covered in mud, smelling like sewage. The house was dark. The table was set with cold food and melted candles. Elena was standing in the hallway with a suitcase. "I'm sorry," I said, exhausted. The main burst. "I had to. There's always a main, Lucas," she said softly. Her eyes were dry. She had finished crying hours ago. "There's always a crisis. You're married to that building. You're married to your father's approval. You're not married to me." I watched her drive away. I stood in the driveway, holding my hard hat, and I felt a piece of me die. But the next morning, I was back at the site at 6 a.m. Because I was building a legacy, I told myself it was worth it. I told myself that one day, when I ran the company, I would have time. I did it all because of the promise. The promise wasn't written down. It didn't need to be. It was in the way my father looked at me after a profitable quarter. It was in the way he introduced me to clients. "This is Lucas," he would say, clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder. "He's the brains of the operation. When I retire, he's taking the keys." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I was the only one who knew how the machine worked. But I forgot about the golden child. My brother, Julian. Julian is 5 years younger than me. And while I was studying structural loads and tensile strength, Julian was studying modern philosophy at a private liberal arts college that costs $60,000 a year, paid for, of course, by the company profits I generated. Julian had never held a shovel. He had never negotiated a contract. He had never fired a subcontractor for drinking on a job. Julian liked the idea of business. He liked the suits. He liked the lunches. He liked telling girls at bars that he was an executive. When Julian graduated, barely, Dad hired him immediately. "We need fresh eyes," Dad told me. "He's going to be the director of brand strategy." "What does a construction company need with brand strategy?" I asked, looking at Julian, who was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. "Synergy, Lucas," Julian said, flashing a bright, empty smile. "We need to disrupt the vertical. We need to be a lifestyle brand, not just a builder." I roll my eyes. "Just don't get in the way of the trucks, Julian." For 5 years, Julian was a parasite. He sat in a glass office, posting on LinkedIn about leadership while ordering catered lunches on the company card. I remember one specific incident 3 years ago, the West Side Lofts project. We were in the boardroom. Dad sat at the head of the table. Julian was pitching a cost-saving measure. "I found a new supplier for the exterior glass," Julian said, sliding a glossy brochure across the mahogany table. "They're based in Shenzhen. I can get the panels for 15% less than our German supplier. That's $100,000 in savings, Dad. Pure profit." I picked up the brochure. I looked at the specs. "Julian," I said, keeping my voice calm, "these panels are rated for Category 2 winds. The building code for a high-rise in this city requires Category 4. If a hurricane hits, these windows will pop out and kill pedestrians." "You're always so negative," Julian sighed, looking at Dad. "Lucas is obsessed with the worst-case scenario. The odds of a direct hit are minimal. It's in calculated risk." "It's not a risk." I slammed the brochure down. "It's illegal, and it's dangerous." Dad looked at the brochure. He looked at the savings. Then he looked at Julian's hopeful face. "Maybe we can get a variance," Dad said. "Let Julian try, Lucas. He's showing initiative. You can't crush his spirit every time he has an idea." "It's not his spirit I'm worried about," I said. "It's the lawsuits." They ordered the glass. 3 months later, the inspector failed the entire facade. We had to tear it all out. I had to fly to Germany, beg our original supplier for a rush order, and pay double shipping. It cost the company $300,000. Julian didn't get fired. He didn't even get a reprimand. Dad took him out for a steak dinner to cheer him up after his failure. I tolerated him. I cleaned up his messes. I treated him like a mascot, harmless, expensive, but ultimately irrelevant. Then came the 40th Anniversary Gala. It was 6 months ago. The Ritz-Carlton Ballroom. Black tie. The entire industry was there. City council members, suppliers, competitors, and our entire staff of 300 people. This was the night. Dad had been hinting at it for months. He was turning 65. He was stepping down. I had prepared. I bought a new tuxedo. I had written a speech about legacy, about the future of green building, about honoring the foundation Dad built. I was ready to take the helm. I felt for the first time that the sacrifice, the lost marriage, the gray hairs, the sleepless nights was finally worth it. The lights went down. The spotlight hit the stage. Dad walked out. He looked regal. His hair was silver, his suit immaculate. The crowd applauded. He loved the applause. 40 years, Dad began, his voice thick with emotion. 40 years ago, I had a pickup truck and a dream. Today, Sterling Construction is a titan. He gestured to the room. He talked about our projects. He talked about grit. He talked about family. But, he said, smiling, a company needs fresh blood to survive. It needs vision. It needs a leader who understands the modern world, who understands that we are building the future, not just buildings. I straightened my tie. I took a breath. I prepared to stand up. "That is why," Dad continued, beaming, "tonight I am announcing my official retirement. and I am proud to introduce the new CEO of Sterling Construction, my son, Julian Sterling. The silence in my head was absolute. It was a physical vacuum, sucking the air out of my lungs. There was polite applause from the room, confused applause. I saw Mike, our general superintendent, sitting at table 5. He dropped his fork. His mouth hung open. I saw Sarah, our head of sales, frown and check her program, thinking there was a typo. Julian bounded onto the stage. He looked like he had just won a game show. He hugged Dad. He grabbed the microphone. Wow, Julian laughed, his voice booming over the speakers. Big shoes to fill. But I have so many ideas, guys. We're going to pivot. We're going to be a tech-forward construction solution. We're going to use AI to design spaces. We're going to disrupt everything. Buzzwords. Meaningless, empty buzzwords from a man who couldn't tell the difference between drywall and plywood. Dad looked out at the crowd, searching for me. He locked eyes with me. He smiled. It was a tight, pleading smile. A smile that said, please, don't make a scene. Be the good soldier. Support your brother. The foundation is everything. I looked at Julian up there, preening. The foundation was cracked, and Dad had just handed him a sledgehammer. I didn't storm the stage. I didn't flip a table. I didn't scream. I took a sip of my champagne. It tasted like ash. I set the glass down on the table with a soft clink. And I walked out of the ballroom. Dad caught me in the hallway near the coat check. He was breathless. Lucas, he hissed, grabbing my arm. Where are you going? You're missing the toast. Julian is about to cut the cake. I'm going home. Richard, I said. He recoiled. I had never called him Richard. Richard, he whispered. I'm your father. And don't be like this. Don't be jealous. Julian needs you. He's the vision, but you're the nuts and bolts. You're going to be his COO. It's a great partnership. He handles the clients, you handle the work. I'm giving you a raise. Cool, I repeated, my voice dangerously quiet. You want me to report to my little brother? You want me to take orders from a kid who cost us 300 grand on the West Side job because he didn't read the specs? He has the charisma, Lucas, Dad argued, his face flushing. You're too rigid. You're too focused on the details. You scare people. Julian makes them feel good. He sees the big picture. Besides, I couldn't just leave him with nothing. There it was, the truth, naked and ugly in the hallway of the Ritz. You couldn't leave him with nothing, I said. So you gave him everything. You can survive anywhere, Lucas. Dad pleaded. You're brilliant. You're tough. Julian, if he doesn't have this, he has nothing. He needs the title. You don't need the title to be great. I was competent, so I was punished. Julian was incompetent, so he was rewarded. I was the safety net for his high-wire act. I see, I said. I looked at the man I had idolized for 15 years. I saw a coward. You're right. I can survive anywhere. So you'll stay? Dad asked, relieved. You'll help him transition? I pulled my arm out of his grip. I'll see you tomorrow, I said. I went home. I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, loosening my tie, and opened my laptop. I pulled up the employee handbook. I pulled up my contract. I looked at my non-compete clause. I had written it myself 5 years ago for our executives to protect the company from outside threats. But I noticed a loophole I had never considered until now. It specified that I couldn't solicit current active clients for 6 months. It said nothing about bidding on new public contracts. And it said nothing about hiring staff who resign voluntarily. I typed my resignation letter. 2 sentences. Effective immediately, I resigned from my position at Sterling Construction. I wish you the best of luck with your disruption. The next morning, I walked into the office at 7 a.m. The place was empty. The cleaning crew was still vacuuming the carpets. I went to my office. I didn't take the computer. I didn't take the files. I packed a single box. A picture of my dog, my engineering license, and my Rolodex. I walked down the hall to Mike's office. Mike was the general superintendent. He ran the crews. He was the guy who actually got things built. He had been with us for 20 years. He was the kind of guy who could look at a pile of dirt and tell you exactly how many yards of fill you needed. He was drinking coffee, looking miserable. "Morning, Lucas," he grunted. "Hell of a party." "I'm leaving, Mike," I said. He looked up. He didn't look surprised. I figured. "Where you going?" "I'm starting my own firm," I said. "Apex Builders. I'm operating out of my garage starting today." Mike nodded slowly. He took a sip of coffee. "Who's running the crews here?" "Julian," I said. Mike laughed, a deep, belly laugh that shook the desk. "Julian? The kid asked me last week if we could use cheaper wood for the framing on the high school. I told him it was steel framing. He didn't know the difference." "I can't pay you what you make here," I said. "Not for a few months. But I can give you equity. 10% ownership." Mike stood up. He grabbed his hard hat off the hook. "I don't need equity. I need to work for a guy who knows which end of the hammer to hold. I'm in." "Me too," a voice said from the doorway. It was Sarah, the head of sales. She had heard us. She looked furious. "I just had a meeting with Julian," she said, tossing a folder onto Mike's desk. "He wants to rebrand our sales pitch. He wants to focus on lifestyle vibes instead of safety records. He told me to stop talking about boring stuff like structural integrity. I can't sell that, Lucas. I won't sell that. I'm coming with you." By 9 a.m., I had resigned. By 10 a.m., Mike and Sarah had resigned. By noon, 3 of our best project managers, guys I'd trained myself, had walked out. We left a skeleton crew behind. We left Julian with the keys to the castle, but we took the army. The first month was brutal. We worked out of my garage. It was cold. We had 3 folding tables, a coffee maker that leaked, and a lot of silence. We had no equipment, no lines of credit, and no reputation under the new name. 2 weeks in, a black Mercedes pulled into my driveway. It was Dad. He walked into the garage, looking around at our pathetic setup with a mixture of pity and relief. "So," he said, kicking a loose wire on the floor, "this is the empire?" "It's a start," I said, not looking up from my laptop. "Lucas, come on," Dad said. "This is embarrassing. Look, I talked to Julian. He's willing to be generous. We have a small overflow job, a repaving project for a strip mall. It's beneath us, really, but we could sub it out to you. Get you some cash flow." He was offering me crumbs. He was offering me charity from the table I had built. "I don't want your scraps, Dad," I said. "Don't be proud," he sighed. "You're going to starve out here. You can't compete with Sterling. We have the capital. We have the history." "I have the competence," I said. "Get off my property." He shook his head. "I'm trying to save you, son." "Save yourself," I said. He left. I watched him drive away, and that pity turned into fuel. We knew the market, and we knew the enemy. Sterling Construction, now run by Julian, was currently bidding on the massive riverfront redevelopment project. It was a $50 million contract from the city. Dad had been banking on this job for his retirement fund. I knew the bid. I had written the preliminary specs before I left. "They're going to bid high," I told Sarah one night, staring at the whiteboard in my kitchen. "Julian is greedy. He wants to show a huge profit margin in his first quarter to prove he's a genius. He's going to pad the labor costs by 20% to pay for his new branding agency." "So he undercut them?" Sarah asked. "No," I said. "We don't just undercut them. We outplan them." I pulled up a schematic. Julian is going to use traditional poured concrete. It takes 6 months to cure fully in this weather. We're going to bid using the new modular precast technique. It's more expensive up front, but it cuts the timeline by 4 months. "Dad always said that was too experimental," Sarah said. "Dad was scared of change," I said. "I'm not." We submitted our bid. Apex Builders, a company that didn't even have a logo yet. 2 weeks later, the city council meeting was held. The room was packed. Julian was there in the front row, wearing a shiny purple suit, looking bored, scrolling on his phone. Dad was in the back, looking nervous. They announced the winner. For the riverfront project, the councilwoman read, adjusting her glasses, "Due to the innovative timeline and significant cost-saving measures regarding the construction schedule, the contract is awarded to Apex Builders." Julian's head snapped up. He looked around, confused. Dad turned pale. I stood up from the back row. I nodded to the councilwoman. I didn't look at my family. I just walked out. That was the first domino. Without the riverfront job, Sterling had a cash flow problem. They had a massive overhead, a fancy office downtown, leased trucks, and Julian's exorbitant salary. Julian panicked. I heard about it from friends still on the inside. To save money, Julian started stiffing subcontractors. He delayed payments to the electricians. He shorted the plumbers. Rule number one of construction: you pay your subs. If you don't pay the subs, the work stops. One afternoon, my phone rang. It was Tony, the owner of the largest electrical contracting firm in the city. We had worked together for 10 years. "Lucas," Tony said, "I'm at the Sterling site at the mall. Julian just told me he can't pay the invoice for last month until next quarter. He tried to pay me in future equity. Can you believe that?" "I believe it," I said. "I'm pulling my guys," Tony said. "I'm walking off the job. You got any work for 30 electricians?" "I do," I said. "Send them to the riverfront. I'll pay you on Friday." Done. Work stopped on the mall renovation. Then the stadium. The local unions put Sterling on the do not work list. Meanwhile, at Apex, we were flying. Because we had Mike, the subs trusted us. They knew I paid on time every Friday without fail. They flocked to our jobs. We picked up 2 more mid-sized contracts that Sterling defaulted on. 3 months in, the phone rang. It was my mother. "Lucas," she sounded tired. Her voice was thin. "Please, your father is having chest pains from stress. You need to stop this." "Stop what?" I asked, looking at a blueprint for a new library. "Stop stealing our work," she cried. "You're humiliating your brother. The bank is threatening to call the loan on the business. If the business goes under, we lose the house. We lose everything." "I'm not stealing anything, Mom," I said calmly. "It's a free market. I'm bidding. They're losing. Maybe Julian should use some of that vision to figure it out." "You're doing this out of spite," she yelled. "You're destroying your family." "No," I said. "I'm doing this because Dad taught me that competence is the concrete. You built your house on a swamp because he was your favorite. Now it's sinking." I hung up. Month 5. The death blow. Sterling Construction was being investigated by OSHA. Apparently, on a high-rise job, Julian had tried to save money by buying non-graded safety harnesses from an unverified vendor. A strap snapped. A worker fell 2 stories. He lived, but he broke both legs. It was negligence. Criminal negligence. The insurance premium skyrocketed. The city pulled their permits. The bonding company revoked their surety. I was in my new office, a real one this time, in an industrial park, when Sarah walked in. She looked solemn. "They're done," she said. "Sterling just filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They're liquidating assets." I felt a pang of sadness. Not for Julian, but for the name. Sterling. I had built that name. I had polished it. And I had watched them drag it through the mud in less than 6 months. "Get the lawyers," I said. "Why?" Sarah asked. "Do you want to sue them?" "No," I said, standing up. "We're going to the auction." The auction was held yesterday. It was raining. A gray, miserable drizzle that made everything look slick and cold. A fitting backdrop for a funeral. They were auctioning off the equipment. The excavators, the cranes, the trucks. All the things I had purchased over the last decade. The yellow paint on the excavators glistened in the rain. Dad was there. He looked 20 years older. He was slumped in a folding chair under a tent, holding a styrofoam cup of coffee. He was wearing an old jacket. Julian was nowhere to be found. I heard he moved to Bali to find himself once the checks stopped clearing. I walked in. Dad saw me. He stood up, shaky. "Lucas," he rasped. "You came to watch? You came to gloat?" "No," I said. "I came to buy." You want the trucks?" "I want it all," I said. "The equipment, the warehouse, the client list, the name." "You want the name?" Dad asked, tears welling in his eyes. "After we ruined it?" "I'll fix it," I said. "I'll rebrand. Apex Sterling. I'll remind people that there was a Sterling who actually knew how to build." I bid. I won. I bought my father's entire lifetime of work for pennies on the dollar. The auctioneer slammed the gavel, and just like that, The empire was mine. After the auction, Dad walked over to me. He looked small, defeated, a king without a kingdom. I made a mistake, he whispered. I am sorry. I thought. I thought because he was my son, he could do what you do. I didn't realize that you were the one who made me look good all those years. You're right, I said. You made a mistake. You bet on blood. I bet on the work. What happens now, he asked. The house, the retirement fund, it's all gone, Lucas. The bankruptcy took it all. Your mother and I, we have nothing. I looked at him. This was the man who chose my brother over me. This was the man who was willing to let me be a subordinate for the rest of my life. But he was still the man who taught me how to pour concrete. He was still the man who gave me my first hard hat. I'm hiring, I said. Dad blinked. What? I need a site manager for the riverfront project, I said. Mike is too busy running operations. I need someone who knows how to read a soil report. Someone with experience. You want me to work for you? Dad asked. For my own son? For Apex Sterling, I corrected. It's an entry-level management position. The pay is fair, but you report to Mike, and you don't get an office. You're in the trailer. He looked at me. He looked at the empty warehouse that used to be his kingdom. He looked at the trucks that now belonged to me. He swallowed his pride. It was a hard pill. I could see it going down, scraping his throat. I need the insurance, he muttered. Good, I said. Be there Monday at 6 a.m. Don't be late. And Dad. He looked up. Bring your boots, I said. We have a lot of work to do. I walked away. Julian is in Bali, posting pictures of smoothie bowls, living off the last of Mom's savings until that runs dry. Dad is working in a trailer, checking invoices for the company he used to own. And me? I'm sitting in the CEO's chair. Not because it was given to me, but because I built the damn chair myself. Have you ever been passed over for a promotion in favor of the boss's favorite? Do you think Lucas was too harsh on his father? Or was it the ultimate lesson in business? If you believe that competence should always win over nepotism, hit that like button and subscribe. #BusinessRevenge.